Hey, campfire crew, let's get it on. My One Night Stand, submitted by Ash. All of those times I thought I was invincible usually happened during my 20s. What is it about that age that makes you think you can handle everything and everyone? I learned the hard way. I was visiting my sister at college. She was going to school in a large college city. Lots of bars, lots of drinking, lots of college kids all feeling invincible. And there I was, at a bar that I knew nobody except my sister, drinking and laughing at strangers' jokes. Before long, I was introduced to a cute boy, around my age, possibly a little younger. My sister introduced us, and we hit it right off. I will admit, the alcohol definitely added to his personality. I was absolutely looking through beer goggles. He was also pretty intoxicated, but I didn't care. We were young and having fun. Before long, he asked if I wanted to leave. I knew exactly what that meant. And yes, I was up for it. I didn't know anything about him, could not hear what he was yelling in my ear at the bar. I just thought he was cute. I know, how stupid of me. I left with him, but not before telling my sister I was going. She couldn't really hear me through the music and the other people talking and yelling, but I wasn't aware of that. We went to where I do not even know to this day. I was a complete stranger in that town, so leaving with this guy was stupid and dangerous. As I mentioned already, I felt like nothing could harm me. I would learn to regret my decision to leave with him that night. I don't remember where we walked to get to his apartment. I just remember flirting the whole way, enjoying his company for what it was worth. We got to his house, and it was an efficiency apartment. One large room with a small room off of the main room for a bathroom. The kitchen was in the main room. Not much furniture, a mattress on the floor, and clothes left lying everywhere. I do remember he explained that he was with the police force, narcotics division specifically. He would raid drug houses weekly with his partner and other police officers. It was dangerous, and he had been involved in many weapon exchanges. Very scary and dangerous job for someone so young, I thought. Soon we were making out on the mattress, getting to the business at hand. I wasn't sure how far I wanted to go with this guy, but the alcohol that was coursing through my veins took over. Next thing I knew, we were lying in bed naked, talking and slightly dozing on and off. I asked for a glass of water and began to take notice of my surroundings while he went to get it. His uniform was on the floor, and there was other police paraphernalia around that I was unaccustomed to. I began to look at all the little things, taking notice of who this guy was. The alcohol was wearing off, and my alertness was coming back. Who was this guy, I thought? As I looked about, I noticed he had received a few accommodations for his bravery. Cool. He had a lot of the typical young guys things. Shot glasses, alcohol bottles, some empty, some half full, and toiletries lying about. Not much food, but scraps of what he had recently eaten were scattered about as well. Typical, right? Then I noticed the gun, and a knife, and another gun. I don't know anything about weapons, but the one closest to the bed was very large, black, and shiny. I began to get a little frightened. Not terribly so, because he was an officer of the law, right? I figured he knew about safety, and probably all people who were cops had stuff like this in their home. I was so young and naive. I took the water from him and took a sip. He must have noticed me looking at his things and began to talk about his job. I asked him a question about the guns, and he responded that most cops have some of their weapons at home. He had gotten a few guns from his uncles who were also on the force, so okay, no alarms yet. Then, as I was looking down at the floor, I felt a metallic circle pressed against my temple. "Dare me to pull the trigger?" he asked. Holy shit, I thought. What do I say? I went blank, completely bereft of words. Why does that happen? Time slows down into milliseconds. But then something came to mind and I blurted out, "I've never held a gun before. Can I hold it?" Without hesitating, he handed over the gun and I pretended to be amazed at the weapon in my hands. Actually, I was shaking. I steadied my hands the best way I could, and I asked him dumb questions that I can't even remember this day, just to distract him. He answered, then got up to use the toilet. Thank God he shut the door. I quickly opened the chamber, and yes, it was fully loaded. Now I was shaking all over. I quickly emptied it, threw the bullets under the mattress, and then went looking for the other guns I had seen around the room. I did the same thing with those, and they were all loaded. And then I sat back down in my previous position. When he came out of the bathroom, I explained I had an early flight home and had to be getting back. I mean, that was a lie. I just wanted to get out of there as quickly as possible. Since the alcohol was wearing off, we both seemed to be over the attraction we first felt. He gladly took me to my sister's house, where I snuck back inside. She was furious with me for leaving with him. I didn't know it at the time, but that was her friend's boyfriend. He never mentioned that, and if my sister told me in the bar, I didn't hear her. Regardless, I told her what happened, and all she could focus on was that I left that night with that guy and hurt her friend's feelings. I told her that he was crazy, but my protests fell on deaf ears. I just went to the airport that morning, and my sister and I did not speak for a few months afterwards. Meanwhile, I had given that guy my phone number. Stupid, right? But I would have agreed to anything just to get out of his apartment that night and away from him. I answered only 3 times when he called. I went to a school very far away from him, so I felt it was safe to maintain a phone relationship with him. The first call was a few weeks after this incident, and he told me that he had just lost his partner. He was drunk off his ass and explained it had happened when they busted a drug house. His partner shot while he was right next to him. A few weeks later, he called again, and there was another death in his unit. He was drunk again. I got the picture. He used alcohol to escape from the job and the fatalities, and I could understand that to some degree. But the gun to my head? That was a different story. That was just scary and insane. Do I need to say I learned a very valuable lesson that night? I would say yes, but not entirely. Did that stop the crazy behavior on my part? I never ever went home with anyone I did not know or recognize after that. I always checked with my friends before I left to make sure they knew where I was going and who I was with. I mean, let's be clear. I didn't make a habit out of this, but still not a bright idea. But I was young and infallible, right? Nope. This is a story I tell to warn others about the danger of doing things like that. I hope they take this to heart and learn from my mistakes. Possible abduction, submitted by Salma S. I can't say what exactly happened because I'm still unsure to this day how or why it happened. But when I was around 7 or 8, my brother and I shared a room together. I was in the top bunk and he was on the bottom. It was an uneventful night. Nothing out of the ordinary had happened leading up to us going to bed. I remember waking up in the middle of the night. I usually always wake up 1 or 2 times a night, so this wasn't any different to me. I just turned over and tried to go back to sleep. I noticed that I was cold. I tried to tug my blanket over me thinking it was off, and that would explain why I was cold. But it was already on me. And that's when I noticed I was completely naked under my covers. At first I thought I was just half asleep, and I was stuck in a dream. But I quickly realized that wasn't the case, and I frantically looked for my clothes under the blankets. They just weren't there. I was too sleepy to freak out at that point. I just wanted to get some clothes on as fast as I could without waking up anyone, let alone my brother. Maybe go back to sleep. I remember sprinting to turn the lights on, grabbing whatever clothes I could find from my drawers, and then booking it to the restroom. I thought I was the only one up, so when I heard a knock at the door, I jumped a bit. It was my mom, and she was asking what I was doing. Too confused and a bit scared to tell her, I just said I had to use the restroom. That was good enough for her, so she left and we both went back to bed. Thinking back now, I've always used the restroom in the middle of the night. I wonder why my mom chose that night to check up on me. I don't know, maybe it was a mom instinct she felt. When I got back to bed, I lay there, and I thought about it more and more, how weird it was for me to wake up like that. And it started to freak me out. So I walked over to my parents' room, and I tried to wake up my mom as quietly as possible. But she woke up with a gasp. I feel like almost all moms do that. No matter how lately you try to wake them up, they will always wake up as if there's a serial killer right in front of them. She woke up, and I told her what had happened. I know she thought it was weird too, but I guess to make me feel more at ease, she just walked me over to my bed and put me back asleep. I did go to sleep, and in the morning I yanked off all my blankets. And there they were, all my clothes from the night before. I could have sworn that they weren't anywhere in my bed, but there they were. To this day, I'm not sure what happened that night, and I've chalked it up to sleepwalking. I used to be a very weird kid with a weird sleepwalking issue, and scared my dad a couple of times with it. But all of those episodes stopped when I was about 5. My parents liked to tease me that I was abducted by aliens. Maybe I was, who's to say otherwise? Anyways, that was probably the weirdest thing that has happened to me ever. Hitchhiking Ghost, submitted by Michael G. I'm not one who believes a whole lot in the paranormal. There are things that can't be explained, but to believe that ghosts are everywhere, following us, waiting to either scare us or hurt us, that's not my belief. That being said, a few weeks ago in late January, we had a massive cold hit us in St. Adèle, Quebec, Canada. It was 30 below or more, with a wind chill factor that made it feel like it was 40 below. For any of you wondering out there, Celsius and Fahrenheit are the same when it's minus 30 or 40. It was like this for at least 4 days. When I went out to shovel after the cold ended, it was only 4 below then, and I shoveled in my t-shirt. On one of the nights where it was really cold, I had to heat up my car for at least 15 minutes before going anywhere. That's if you wanted to be comfortable while driving. I took my usual route home from work, and I was glad there weren't too many cars on the road. When I arrived at my street, I saw that there was a woman where the sidewalk turned. So instead of driving straight to my block apartment building, I stopped beside her and asked her if everything was all right. She was an older woman. She was wearing a body-length white winter coat, and she had a shoulder bag and, thankfully, winter boots. She told me she'd been waiting for her ride for half an hour. Being that cold outside, I asked her if she needed a ride. She didn't hesitate and got in. I was happy that I had a car with heated seats. I activated the heater in the passenger seat. With my car being so warm for driving for 20-ish minutes, she got comfortable pretty fast. We started with the usual chatter, her thanking me for stopping, me saying it was only natural because it was so cold out, and I asked her where she thought her ride could be. She said that she probably gave him the wrong directions or something, because she's always doing that accidentally, and that one day it would be the death of her. I didn't really pay attention to her comments, as I was on the lookout for her street name near the Tim Hortons in Vaudeville. It's about 10 minutes north of St. Adèle, if you go by car, that is. I saw the road and told her, "Hey, we're here." She was glad and let out a little sigh. She told me to take the next right, and her house would be on the right. I asked her which one, because there were maybe 6 houses, and I didn't know which one to stop in front of. She just said, "You can let me out here." And I looked at her, and she seemed to be startled in a way. I guess it was just me not understanding what she was feeling or thinking, so I didn't insist. I just pulled over, and she got out. She thanked me before closing my door, and I waited till she walked away a bit before doing a 3-point turn. After I did, I decided to wait until she had walked into her house, just in case she might have slipped and then had to spend the rest of the freezing night outside. But I couldn't see her anymore. I looked around in my side view mirror, but I couldn't see her at all anywhere. I decided to step out of my car, fearing the worst, and then followed her footsteps to make sure she didn't slip and hurt herself. But her footprints abruptly stopped. They were right on the side of the road, no sidewalk, but they didn't turn to the right as you would expect when someone walked up to their front entrance. and they were the same distance apart as they had been with every step. I mean, I didn't measure them, obviously. But the left step she took was the last. There weren't any other steps for me to get confused with. And there wasn't even a small ditch on the side of the road. So it's not like her right foot would have slipped and have her fall in. She just wasn't there. I was freezing my ass off, so I ran back to my car and decided to drive around slowly to try and see her. But I never did. I looked for her for about 5 minutes more before deciding to head back home. My thoughts immediately turned to ghosts, but I quickly dismissed that. I didn't believe in ghosts, but what else could she have been? Once I got home, I started looking online for articles of people that may have frozen to death in my immediate area. I found several articles relating to such news, but not where I live. It got me to thinking that maybe, just maybe, a soul or spirit had wandered around and gotten lost. Maybe she was able to cross over now that someone had given her a ride. Whatever the case, I just don't know what happened to her or where she went. Hey gang, I thought I would share this story. I'm not sure if I've ever told this on a live campfire or anywhere else over the years. But something popped into my head the other day, and this happened to me many moons ago. Whether or not there was a scientific explanation behind it or what, I do not know. But I thought I would share a very freaky night that I had back in my senior year of college. I was a DJ at a bar in the college town that I went to, and I literally lived across a very large parking lot from the bar that I worked at. Very popular bar in the town that I was in, and very proud to have been able to spin very high quality alternative tunes there. That's for another time if anybody ever wants me to go off on a tangent, and my love of music and all that kind of jazz. But anyway, one night I had some pals coming up, actually my friend's pals coming up from the town that we lived in back farther north, and everybody was going to be crashing on their side of the house. I lived in a house where there were 4 of us on one side in the back, 4 on the other side in the back. A couple of young ladies lived up in the front apartment, and I think 3 lived above them. So it was a big old house with a lot of different people living there. Anyway, so I got some extra beers from the bar, paid for that, grabbed my couple of crates of CDs and stuff, and started to walk across the parking lot back to my shitty abode that I lived in with my friends. And the minute I got in, I set my crates down. Now, right at our front door, the house split, or the apartment, whatever you want to call it. A kitchen was right there off to the left. Our living room was right to the right. And there was an apartment room back off of the kitchen. My friend John lived back there. My buddy Larry, who came from out of town, was crashed on our couch. I do remember that, and cannot for the life of me know why he didn't wake up during this. But anyway, I get in through the door. I'm right at the threshold. I set my CDs down, and my stove, which is kind of maybe 5 or 6 feet away, gas stove, starts shaking, like unbelievably, like all over the place, just shaking back and forth, so hard that it knocked a ton of shit that we had up on top of our refrigerator, which was right next to it, down onto the floor. The entire stove pulled itself, shaking, as far as the gas line would take it into the kitchen. Now, yes, I had just gotten off of work. Yes, I had way more than my share of beer, as I did almost every night that I worked there. But lucid enough to know, holy shit, that's not right. So the first thing I thought was, okay, these guys are trying to play a prank on me. They know I love scary stuff. But there's no one there. The only one on our side of the house was Larry, who was, when I went over into the living room to see if anybody was home, completely passed out. I mean, I remember actually picking him up by his belt, trying to shake him to wake him up, but he was more than passed out. Larry could tie one on. So now I'm freaked out, and I run through the backyard. Well, it was like a little area between houses, to the other side of the house where I know all my friends are. I blast in there, and I'm like, holy shit, you guys, holy shit, oh my God, what the fuck, this thing, the stove, and I can't even get a story out. And everybody's looking at me like, what the fuck are you talking about? So my friend Pete, who lived with me, and my buddy Tim, and I think who else? I mean, I think Buck maybe came over with us to take a look at it. Everybody just looked at it and looked at the mess on the floor, and they were like, "What the hell happened here?" And I'm like, "I have no idea, man." So I just grabbed the case of beer that I had also dragged home from the bar. We went back over on their side and kept drinking and playing cards or doing whatever. And I finally calmed down and went back. And, the next morning, found out that my roommate John, who lived in the room right off the kitchen, was also passed out, didn't hear a thing. Nobody heard anything, but there was all this stuff all over the floor. And, the stove was pulled right out. And what the hell? So we cleaned up, put everything back, whatever, the ghosts. And one of my closest friends, still to this day, worked for National Fuel and during the summers. And I believe his old man worked there too. But I asked him about it because one of his jobs in the summer was to go out and check on gas lines way out in the middle of nowhere to make sure things were legit. And I asked him about it. I said, is it possible that there could have been a gas surge that would have made that happen? And he was like, highly unlikely. And I said, you've never seen anything like that. He actually asked his dad, and his dad said, that's impossible. That would never happen in a million years. Of course, who knows, right? Maybe some kind of fault. I don't know. We used the stove after that, and everything was fine. Didn't have to call the company. But, oh, man, I'll never forget that. That was probably the last really big kind of unexplained scare that I've had. And holy shit, I am way older now that I look back and how long it's been since I've been in college. But I thought I would share that story. It's more funny now that I look at it. Who knows if it was booze fueled? Who knows if it was a ghost? Who knows what? And maybe it was an elaborate prank that those guys pulled off on me. But all I can say about that is, to this day, none of them have ever admitted it. And I would think that if it was a prank, somebody would have brought it up by now and said, we really got you. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed that one. I'm going to leave this completely raw and unedited. And before I finally officially close out, guys, keep sending me your stories. I love when I can do nothing but listener submitted stuff. It makes this channel and this podcast go. Hey gang, thanks for listening to this episode of Uncle Josh's True Scary Stories. If you have a true scary story of any nature that you'd like to hear narrated on my podcast or YouTube channel, email it to unclejoshtruescarystories@gmail.com. I read them all. I decided to scrap the Valentine's stories for this year, as 2 that I got I could not read, and 1, unfortunately, was so poorly written that I actually had to send a response back apologizing that, as much as I say I read them all, there was no way I could even read that. If you haven't already, please like, share, and subscribe to this channel. And of course, follow me on social media. As little as I do post there, you can find links to that in the description below. Also, if you'd like to take supporting this channel a little bit further, find a link to my Patreon page. That's also down there, right above the comments. Everyone, be excellent to each other. And until next time, be wary of things that go bump in the night. It could be anything. A ghost, a monster, or the guy next door.